Hi girls, what are you doing?
We're looking at different zones for communities.
Why?
Because we're planning on building a community model, and we need to know what type of stores or buildings could go in different zones.
Thank you.
Okay.
Think about this. Last week we talked about and defined what a community was. Okay? We determined what structures go in communities. We learned about community zones, and we talked about things that bring people together in a community. We also talked about different buildings that we might like to design. And some of you had said a fitness center, like Sarah and Katie. Somebody had said McDonald's, like Colin, and we talked about which zones those different buildings go in. You were also told that if you change your mind, is that okay? Yes. Okay, so you'll be working either on your own, or if somebody else is interested in building the same thing that you are, you'll be working as a partner. Yesterday, you were introduced to Sketchup, and today we're going to tinker with it a little bit more. But before we do, we're going to take a look at a brain pop video that talks about architecture. Now, you also know that we're going to have a couple architects coming into the classroom to talk to us, either virtually or in the flesh. But we need to have a good understanding of what architecture is, so that when we go to design our buildings, we can say, oh, I understand that, or I'd like it to have this kind of look, and why. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn our bodies around, and we're going to face the front of the room. You can get your snack, as long as it's not distracting, and we'll put on the video. We know that we have to have something that's going to be structurally sound, serve its purpose, and be appealing to look at. Right? So keeping those things in mind, when we look at Sketchup today, we're going to be taking a look at how to make some of those things aesthetically appealing or looking good. And what we're going to do is we're going to get computers like we did yesterday, and instead of, oops, hang on, Espen. Instead of us going step by step together, there is a video that I'm going to show you. You can't get it on your computers because it's on YouTube, that you can go through. It's a SketchUp video, and it shows you how to do some of those fancy things. You can follow along with that, and you can practice. However, if you choose to tinker, is that okay too? Yeah, okay? So we're going to have the video on up here in the classroom for you to look at and follow if you feel value in that, okay? But if you have another idea or there's something that you really wanted to try that you learned yesterday, you can tinker around with that as well. And we'll all help each other. Okay, do you have any questions about what's going to happen? James?
So you're saying that basically work it yourself if you want?
We can work at our own pace, yes, but there's going to be a tutorial on here. Plus, we're going to help you if you have any questions. Yes, Daniel?
I'm going to bring in Katie and Sarah. Can we split up?
Well, here's what we're going to do right now. Right now, we're still tinkering with the program, okay? Later on, early next week, we're going to take a look at, okay, how are we going to design the building that we choose? But we need to know the basics first and have an understanding of how this program works so that you can design the building that you really want to. Does that make sense? And now what you want to do is... Yep. So when you add your second rectangle, you want to have it touching the first one. That's fine. Yep. Whoops. And you'll see where it touches the end point. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Now to get rid of the line so that you can push it all up at once, you click the arrow button again. Okay, good. So go to the arrow button. Okay, yep, but you have to click on the Select tab. That's the arrow.
It has that brick color and then it's dark brown.
And then the line segments that you don't want, you click and delete. Now, is there another line segment that we need to get rid of? Yep.
Look at the color for making it.
Now if you hit the push-up tool,
It's our color. Good job, Daniel. This is rectangle base.
okay, there you go, kiddo. Does that make sense? Okay.
So you have to find right here is your midpoint. Okay, so you go. Wait, hold on. Okay, so you have to find the midpoint over here. You have to go over here, but you cannot let go. And then you go over way here. And you go over. And you go here. To that point? No, to here. And you go from here to here. And then you have to pull that up. You have to, hold on. You have to move? Okay. No, you have to highlight 2 lines. To highlight 2 lines, so you have to do. No, here. You're not on line. Here, go into your cursor. Select it.
We talked about today all the different things that we've done, and yesterday we shared the community plan, the community map with our zones in them. And that was done by Espen and who was it? Libby. Okay, and they did a really nice job, and they did a much better job than I did, didn't I? You can read it, it's color-coded, very well done. So there's a couple of things that we need to know about this before we start exploring how big it is, okay? What we're going to be talking about today is the area, or how much land this covers, okay? And the perimeter, or the borders, okay? So you are going to be doing some discovering, and you're going to be using your resources, because that's a sign of intelligence, absolutely. And you're going to be using this map, and you're going to be figuring out how big our community is, how big our zones are, and the perimeter around them, right? Now some of these words might sound familiar. Area might sound familiar. Perimeter might sound familiar. You might be saying, no, not a problem, right? Because we have resources that we can use. But what we're... So Nate, show us where the definition for perimeter is.
Right there.
Okay, read it for us.
The distance around a two-dimensional shape.
Okay, so if we look at the two-dimensional shape, can you run your finger around the perimeter of it? Go ahead. Okay, so if we look at those measurements, what would we say the perimeter of that figure is? Can you do it, Alex?
It's the total area.
You can.
Okay, so we're probably not gonna finish this. Oh no, wait. I started. Me too. Okay, 6 plus 14. 20.
20. Yep, 20 units. Does that make sense? So when you go to look at the perimeter, it's the distance around. Now when we look at our map, so go back to our building a community map.
Okay.
And let's take a look at it. Okay, now each one of those little sections is measured as what? Look at the directions. So look. Yep. Look where it gives the directions. Remember we talked about this? How long is a little segment?
A half mile.
A half a mile. And a half make a
Yeah, we're supposed to do the national
So
guard. It has to be the
let's
perimeter.
take a look and see how many miles around the outside of one of those zones is. Okay, so let's count them up. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so okay.
Mile, 2
Now what does a half and a half make?
Okay, half 5 miles.
And a half make a
2 miles.
okay.
2 mile and a half. 3 mile. 3 mile and a half. 4 mile. 4 and a half. 5 mile.
Okay, good. So that's one side of our community.
So all this would equal 20
20 what?
miles.
You doing some exploring and using your resources and finding out the difference between area and perimeter so that we could see how big our zones in our community were and how big our community actually was. And some of you did some investigating and some of you sat down with me and worked on what the difference is between area and perimeter. And before we go back to that to finish working on it, I was wondering if you could explain to me and the class, if we have this figure, how would you find the area and the perimeter? Think in your head. What's the difference? Whisper to a neighbor. Okay. Anybody? Care to share? Katie.
The perimeter is the outside of the square.
So show us. Okay. And what would the perimeter of that square be?
48 inches.
Okay. And how many feet would that be? You did more math than I did.
What?
Yeah, so she added up the inches and then she said, oh, I can just say 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 feet. Good. And what if we had to find the area of this? Mr. Collins.
The area is just one of these. That would be the area.
Well, you're on the right track, buddy. Ask somebody to elaborate for you.
Area is something inside.
Okay. So it's the space inside, right? So what would the area of this square be? Thinking. Residential zone is. Now we know that these lines aren't perfect, so we'll go with whatever. We'll do our best. We'll go with whatever we've got. You have it, Eli? You think?
What?
The area of the residential zone.
Yes.
Okay. What do you think? Okay.
Well, this square here is a square mile. So, and then these are this is a square mile.
Okay.
And then the one above that is a square mile. And then we only have 3 in the middle. So it's
So you marked off.
That's an arrow.
I know that you did this one, buddy, right? Oh, wrong tool. Sorry about that. So this one is one that you marked off. Okay, was there, show me the other one that you marked off. I was coming back here when you did that. Okay. Okay, that's 2. And then where was another one? Okay. So I'm guessing right here is where you start? Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. And we said we're just going to go with the house. Okay, and then what do you have left over, buddy?
this is one of the
Okay. What?
residential ones. Is this your residential?
This is where you, Espen and Espen
Libby.
and Libby had the split. So we're going to say just for our purposes, because we're doing approximately, we won't include this.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
So then it's just, there's 3 up there.
Okay. So for that, how much is that one? And if you're not sure, you can certainly call on somebody.
It quarters.
If you, we know that tomorrow there's going to be, we're going to have a Google Hangout with an architect who actually lives in Connecticut and has written a book, which I'll show you a little bit later. And we know that in order to construct our buildings, we have to make sure that they're big enough, but not too big. So we need to explore some resources to see how big our building should be. And if you look at our corkboard, there are some resources for you. Okay, let's see here. So these are resources on homes, stores, fast food restaurants, fitness centers, and then a general resource which even includes how high you should make a building. Yes?
Yeah, Sketchup is an absolutely fabulous program, and I would encourage you guys to learn that. One of the neat things about learning these programs early is that, one, it's a skill that you can use for the rest of your life, but ultimately, if you guys go into art or architecture, you'll know how to use SketchUp. And as that software develops online, you'll only get better and better at it, and you'll only know more and more about it. So I would encourage you guys to use these free software programs, because ultimately you'll be able to afford the programs that aren't necessarily free.
Now, I do have a question for you, and this is a logistical question.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we kind of explored and discovered how big our buildings should be. And for like a house, we saw that the average house size was about 2,600 feet. Probably not the houses that you build, or the cupcake shop. How big are you girls making your cupcake shop? 2,000, awesome. 2,500 or 2,050? 2,050. 3,050 square feet. And like Colin in the orange is going to make a ticket booth for an amusement park. And how big is yours going to be? Did you hear that?
I did not.
Okay, a little bit.
300 square feet.
300 square feet. Sure, that makes sense.
Now what we're going